Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So Reform UK have announced what sounds like an immigration policy, which will be music to the ears of his supporters. Farage says he will cancel all indefinite leave to remain in the UK and people have to apply for 5-year visas instead. But not only will this wreck the economy, like similar policies are in America, but will make British workers poorer. Let's discuss how. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So there will be lots of consequences to this Reform UK policy, all negative. But let's focus, to begin with at least, on an issue which can unite people. After all, the people who really need to understand the implications here, they don't care if migrant families who've been living here for decades are turfed out in what would amount to Windrush on steroids, but surely they care about their own job prospects. And this policy would hurt them, not help them. The most obvious thing to point out is that these new visas, which Farage is proposing, would require high salaries to qualify, he says. So it's a policy which bans low-paid migrants from the country. But low-paid work exists, right? Someone's got to do it. Otherwise, those jobs don't get done. So if you eject hundreds of thousands of low-paid workers from the country, what will happen? Either we do without their services, which I'll be going over the implications for that later, or British workers will be forced to do them. Not quite sure where these British workers come from, but we can come to that as well. It's literally a policy which forces Reform UK voters into lower paid work. The idea behind tighter immigration is supposed to be, well, if you have fewer workers competing for jobs, you can command better salaries. But there's no competition for the low paid jobs because people don't really want them. If you want a really low paid job, not a problem, mate. Go and get it. People tend to want the better paid jobs. That's where the competition really is. And Farage's plan doesn't restrict visas for the better paid jobs, only the badly paid ones. So Farage is going to let Brits compete for bad jobs. Hooray! But let's look at a couple of scenarios here. So first on the chopping block will, of course, be our social care sector. It's a sector already on its knees, and Reform UK's plan just delivers another crushing blow. Care home bosses won't be able to sponsor new overseas carers. I mean, you think about that. That's not just a number on a spreadsheet. That's a massive hole in our care system, a chasm that British workers are expected to bridge. We're talking about a staggering, at least 120,000 vacancies that overnight get locked inside the UK labour market. And in fact, it'll be higher than that because there are already a lot of migrant care workers that you're removing. Farage's high salary threshold means roles like care workers are off limits for new overseas recruits. Existing workers will have to work harder for no extra pay. Elderly reform voters will struggle to get any care because suddenly the care sector workforce has been depleted. This is a sector which, remember, already has massive vacancies that are not being filled. So the idea that there's this army of British workers queuing up for them is nonsense. They're already there. You can go and get them anytime you want. Massive vacancies. So the only solution will be Farage will have to force British workers to do them. And the Reform UK government, dependent on the votes of the elderly, they can't afford for care sector to actually collapse. So they will force younger workers out of education and training for better jobs and into low-paid care jobs. Literally the only way. Oh, and in his press conference, Farage basically said that's what he'll do. He said he will force people to do these jobs. He's trying to suggest actually too many people are signed off sick. When he said, well, where are these people coming from then? Oh, there's a ridiculous number of people signed off sick. A clear sign he intends to tell people what work they will and won't be doing. Basically, communism without the communal spirit. But think about his claim here. He's trying to suggest that both the Tories and Labour have allowed hundreds of thousands of idle British workers to lounge around on sick instead of working. That doesn't sound like the sort of thing the Tories would ever do. In fact, they would routinely kick people off benefits to watch them sink or swim in the belief that if you're cruel enough, people will find work. And even Labour, they don't have that attitude. Nonetheless, remember, they tried to restrict access to PIP, which is not an out-of-work benefit at all. Why? For the sake of saving money. So Labour really tried to squeeze the welfare budget to save some money. If they could have identified a significant pool of people who are signed off sick who don't need to be, they would have targeted them. That would have been politically easy to target. No problem at all. The idea that we have got hundreds of thousands of wastrels swinging the lead, it's a common rich guy trope. You see it in the papers all the time, but it doesn't stand up to logic. Now, some may say that Yusuf claims that the care sector will be fine because they're going to make exemptions, right? But are they? All of the migrants Reform are talking about deporting all work in sectors where there are acute shortages. So either they will get access to the acute shortage visas, in which case Reform UK don't deport anyone, or they're lying, and it will include care workers as well. It's one or the other. Reform UK should be asked which sectors will be affected. Make them show they're working out for how they'll deport hundreds of thousands, whilst also having exemptions for shortage sectors. I guarantee they can't. How do I know? Because the existing rules that the Tories brought in after Brexit already ban low-paid migrants getting visas. It's already in there. The policy effectively already exists, right? Unless, of course, they work in a shortage field, in which case it's on the exemptions list. So literally every low-paid migrant in this country right now is on a shortage visa because the salary is actually quite high to qualify for them without it. Next up, let's talk about salary thresholds. So this is where things get a little sneaky in ways that you might not imagine. So the minimum salary for these visas is going to jump up. Farage has said so. Farage being Farage, of course, we won't know exactly what to. Even if he gives a figure now, he'll change it in the drop of a hat. Sounds like that should drag British salaries up, right? That's the way it should work, yeah? Like employers will suddenly have to pay everyone more to compete. No, that's the illusion. Because here's the truth. Most businesses are small businesses. They can't magically find more money to pay you more. So instead what they do is they have to make choices. And those choices tend to come at your expense. Head office payroll data from the hospitality sector, for example, shows a bit of a trend. When the threshold last rose, 14% of firms froze new hires and a significant 9% automated roles where possible. We saw a similar thing, didn't we? I mean, Nigel Farage is one of the ones complaining about this. Rachel Reeves puts up employers' national insurance very slightly. And recruitment was frozen for a little while. It's getting back up to decent times now. They're planning on hiring again now that they've got used to it. But to begin with, that was a small increase in employers' national insurance. Imagine suddenly having to whack up wages. Well, it's not going to happen. Because what would happen is they would stop hiring people. Then these businesses don't absorb costs. They shrink the team. They need their profit margins. The people who are paid to run the business, or the owners of the business, if they own the business, that profit margin is their pay. They want that to be as high as possible. So they will find ways to do things for less, which means putting more on their existing workers, not hiring new ones. If you're a British supervisor, say, earning like 35 grand, and you're hoping for a promotion that would put you into a more senior role, well, that looks like it's not going to happen. Why? Because that senior role, if it's going to be sponsored now, has an even higher bar, and a lot of companies aren't going to create that role. So they'll just leave it vacant. It's not just about salary, it's about skill level as well. Many mid-skilled roles that once offered a path to sponsorship are now off the table, which narrows the field dramatically, making it harder for British workers to climb the ladder when the rungs above them are being removed or made inaccessible. Meanwhile, the vacancy stays empty. The overtime list dries up because there's no one to cover it. Your take-home pay stalls because there's no upward pressure. Then you've got shock number 2. The threshold's a glass ceiling that's painted to look like a ladder. So it promises upward mobility, but in reality it freezes wages and stifles career progression for a lot of British workers. Because if you remove, everything's a pyramid scheme, right? If you remove a load of workers from the bottom end, you don't need as many supervising them higher up. So you just get rid of a load of higher paid jobs as well. Like I say, because the visas remain accessible for well-paying jobs, British workers will not only stay competing with migrants with the Reform UK government, but they'll find more competition because there'll be fewer of those well-paid jobs. The pressure will be on doing the lower-paid jobs because that's where the vacancies will be for vital jobs at the low-paying end. That's where Farage will shove you. Also, this might be an interesting moment to take note that Farage was against the above inflation pay awards for low-paid workers and voted against the Employment Rights Bill. So not only will he shove Brits into the low-paid work, he will be repealing your rights and will squeeze your pay further. Oh, those 0 hours contracts, they'll be back. Hire and refire, yeah, that'll be back. And the reality is that even though Farage will force Brits into these low-paid jobs, that won't even fix the problem at the national end. There aren't enough people. We already can't fill the vacancies we have. There isn't this massive pool of scroungers, right? I mean, sometimes we have skill issues. Sometimes it's because the work is bollocks. Sometimes it's because of geography. Areas of high vacancies tend not to be located where you've got high unemployment. Otherwise, you'd fill the vacancies. So entire sectors will just collapse. The care sector would certainly collapse. The NHS wouldn't be able to get enough nurses or similar grade medical professionals because they don't qualify. The construction industry will have to scale back, but that's fine because Farage isn't interested in building things anyway. He and his mates already got their mansions. Besides, with the blow to the economy this policy would cause, there wouldn't be the money to build anything new either. And all of this ignores the myriad legal and moral reasons why this policy would be an utter disaster. For example, unless there were hefty exemptions, it would breach our treaty with the EU. Yusuf says, oh, they'll negotiate with the EU. No, they won't. The EU will say, you will, because they've got to back their own citizens, right? They're not going to allow Reform UK to sacrifice their citizens. They will say, we've got a treaty with you, we expect you to honour it. If they don't, and Farage pretends he doesn't really care about relationships with the EU, but that would mean another level of Brexit economic sanctions against us. So there will be then less trade with the EU, more jobs lost, which I guess works out because people will lose their reasonably paid jobs in trade and Farage will tell them to turn up for duty bum wiping at the local care home. Enjoy your Brexit benefits. Then you think about the macro level taxation here. So Farage openly plans to remove hundreds of thousands of workers from the country. It won't actually be overnight because there'll be a lot of legal wrangling, but at some point. Now, these people pay taxes and then they spend the rest of their salaries in the local community, right? Remember, there isn't a queue of unemployed Brits waiting to do this work because we're talking about sectors where there are already loads of unfilled vacancies. Care, NHS, construction, hospitality, things like that. So the jobs won't get done, which means the salaries won't get paid, which means no taxes, no spending in the local economy. Overnight, you remove goodness knows how many billions of pounds from both the Treasury and local economies. That means Thatcher-style ghost towns. But not just in the north this time, places like Essex as well. Have fun, Clacton. Basically, this policy, because it's anti-immigration, will be lapped up by the Reform supporters. But it's not just anti-immigration, it's anti-British worker as well. It literally pulls people out of our economy, which means it pulls money out of our economy. And people have this idea, and this is where they go wrong. This is why Reform UK's ideas sound plausible to them. People think that Britain's like this isolated system with a fixed amount of money, and the more people in it, the more you're having to distribute it outright. No, that's not how it works. We're part of a global economy. If we produce less, there's less money. There's no fixed money in the country at all. It's all just a swirling mass of trade. If we produce less, there's less trade, less money in the country to go around. And this is already happening in the USA. And think about it this way. We have a retired population, right? It's not getting rid of them because there's not that many migrants in that retired population. We're talking about working age people. So you're removing a load of workers from the economy who are funding the retired population. Who's going to fund the retired population that's going to basically be staying? The workers. So they're going to have to pay higher taxes. We're already seeing it in the USA. Trump is having to fire the people who report on the state of the economy in order to hide that data in future because it's just getting worse and worse. But we can already see from the American data that has come out, things are going very badly and on a downward slope. The same will apply here. In fact, it will hit harder because we don't have the economic might of America to survive these sort of brain farts for as long. The resultant fallout would result in the pound crashing, massively increasing the cost of imports. Food prices would shoot up. That's fine because we won't have as many people able to sell you the food because Farage just got rid of all our care workers. So supermarket workers will now be in care homes and everyone else will have to learn how to eat sovereignty. And this barely scratches the surface of what this policy would do. It's an insane policy. The very people who think it sounds good are the ones who will be most screwed by it. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later.